I am the unprofessional professional wrestler, the zombie princess, Jimmy Jacobs, here with the love of my life, Lacey, and you're watching the state of pro wrestling.
SOPW.
Wrestling! Yay!
Hello, this is John Fredrickson for State of Pro Wrestling. We are here with one half of the High Rollers, Jerry Anderson. How are you doing today, Jerry?
I'm doing wonderful. Excellent.
All right, it is great to finally see you. And can you give us a little background, what life was like growing up or where you grew up?
Well, actually, grew up born in the western part of North Dakota, out in the oil country, Dickinson, North Dakota, and lived there till I was 11 years old. After that, we'd moved. My father had died, my mom remarried, and my stepfather got a job in Minnesota, so we moved to Minnesota. And that's when I first saw on television this thing, professional wrestling. I'd seen boxing since I was a little kid, but we lived out in western North Dakota. We had two stations, Dickinson and Bismarck. Neither one of them had wrestling at that time, so I'd never even heard of it. But first thing I saw was Mad Dog Vachon and the Crusher going at it, and I was hooked at a young age of 11 years old. That's kind of how I got my first taste of wrestling. It was quite by accident. It was just like, hey, what's this? You know, I've never seen this, never heard of this, and it was quite the fantasy world for a kid of 11. You know, you just thought, you know, you hated the bad guys, you loved the good guys, and I was there to see Crusher tear up Mad Dog's face, get him bleeding, the blood and the guts, and it was something that stuck with me till for life. I mean, there was a brief period when you kind of found out where things weren't really quite what they seemed to be, and after probably in my 20s I got back into it just for the spectator view and just for the humor and entertainment and just the appreciation of the sport itself. But yeah, so anyway, I was late into the business, but a lifelong fan, and like I started at the age of 11, and never really myself got into it till in my 30s and 40s.
All right, very interesting. And how exactly did you get into wrestling?
Well, that was completely by accident. We had a friend in Annandale who had went to camp for Vern Gagne with the AWA. His name was Dave Rassett. Okay. So he went down at that time. Brad Rangens was doing Vern's camp and training guys down in his place in Hamel. And Pike went through there the first year, and this is when the it was WWF at the time. Vince had just started going national, was just starting to creep nationally around. And Dave ended up blowing his shoulder out, dislocated his shoulder, had to have surgery, and he ended up having to put camp at rest. And take it up the following year. Well, the following year he took the camp back up once he healed up, went through with a bunch of new guys, and the AWA basically was closing its doors to any new talent. The money was tight and stuff like that, and the fan base was all going to the new kid on the block, the WWF.
This is like early or mid 80s?
This was like early 90s.
Okay.
This was like right before the AWA. I think the AWA shut their doors in like 91, 92, because we started in 19, I think our first show was 1991. But anyway, what happened was he basically was told, okay, you're trained, but good luck, go find work yourself. And he had no idea who to talk to for indies or anything, and it was just kind of like his balloon got burst, you know. And anyway, my partner Sterling at the time was working with his family's junkyard, and there was a guy who we all know right now he doesn't have a very good reputation. He's in prison for things we don't want to talk about. But Buck Rock and Roll Zumhofe came walking into the French Lake Junkyard. I don't know if he was buying parts or selling parts, trying to get money or whatever. And Sterling brought up the conversation with him, asking him if he still had anything to do with wrestling. And he said that, yeah, he was running indie shows. And our deal was we wanted to get Dave one match in the ring.
All right.
One time. So anyway, he said, yeah, he'd set it up. We set it up at Annandale High School. He called me just off the wall. I really didn't know Sterling at all that well. I knew his older brothers. I'd hung around with his brothers. We were all real tight. But he's like 10 years younger than me, and he was just freshly out of high school. He was probably early 20s or so. And he called me, asked me if I'd want to be ring announcer. And I just, oh, God, that was just my dream come true. I got to be part of a professional wrestling show. So, yeah, we became, I did the ring announcing. They got the match. We had a bunch of old AWA guys that Buck put together. It was guys like Baron Von Raschke was there, late Rick Renslow. And Dave ended up going against a guy, I don't know if you remember Mike Enos, the Destruction Crew, Mike Enos and Wayne Bloom. They ended up going up to WWE. There were the Beverly Brothers there, a couple of bleached blonde guys. But anyway, Pike wrestled against him, and that was the whole deal. I'd never thought that we'd do another thing, but Sterling had made so much money out of it. He promoted the whole thing that we decided to do a few more of these, and we got kind of hooked onto them until I don't know what we did. It was a Super Wrestling Showdown 1991. It was the night before Super Bowl. It was the first show we put on. That was the one where I'd done my job as a ring announcer. I think it was the following summer we did what was called Star Spangled Wrestling Spectacular. It was right before the 4th of July. And a couple of the wrestlers that we'd met on a different show, because once we promoted a show, we started hanging around different indie shows now that we knew where they were and everything around Minnesota, and got to know a lot of the other talent around. And there was a couple guys called themselves the Punishers, JR and Jamie, that they were doing a tag team, right? And their manager was the Golden Idol, who's back around now again. But anyway, we decided that we wanted to be part of the show, that we wanted to be managers. So we went and rented these outrageous-looking tuxedos. Decided we're going to be these guys called the High Rollers, rich gamblers from Vegas. All right. And that kind of gave us the thirst there. And anyway, Sterling wasn't making the kind of money he was off Dave's first match. I mean, he was struggling to break even. There was a lot of work, time, and effort to put in this wrestling show. So he kind of just quit doing it.
Putting it together promotion-wise?
Yeah, just doing a wrestling promotion. I mean, there's a lot of legwork. It's trying to make money is pretty tough. But the whole town turned out for Pike's first match. They didn't have the same appeal to his third match, fourth match and whatever. So anyway, the business kind of stopped, the FLWA. Okay. Until about 5 years later, in the mid-late 90s, about 96, 97, Sterling and my brother and a few friends bought a bar in Waverly, Minnesota. It was actually a bowling alley, a 4-lane bowling alley. And they converted it into a dance floor. They built an outside area there, patio deck and everything. Well, they wanted to decide for entertainment, all-star wrestling. So that came back in. And one of the guys that would come for the shows was a guy called the Masked Jungle Fighter, who at the time, him, along with Eddie Sharkey, who trained Jesse the Body, the Road Warriors, Rick Steiner, Rick Rude, I mean, the list goes on and on, some really big names in the business, was partnered with him. And he said, hey, why don't you come actually go to wrestling camp? Because we were putting ourselves over on these Waverly shows at the Wave as the High Rollers. Right. He said, just to learn what the hell you're doing so you don't kill yourself. So at the age of 40, when most people are getting out of sports, I went to wrestling camp.
That's awesome.
And that's kind of how it started, how it took off. We were working for all the promotions around Minnesota. So we worked Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, a lot of Wisconsin. Wisconsin was a big spot for us for quite a while. Iowa, we'd hit every now and then. But yeah, we did a lot in the upper Midwest.
And this was around like the mid 90s.
This was like the late mid, like I'm saying, we started out in 96, 97, where this started going, where we actually went to camp, got really trained and everything, and at least enough to know what the hell we're doing. And that still probably for about the next 10 years we ran pretty hard. And now we still do it, but the age has crept up on us, so it's slowed down a little bit. But our glory days are definitely in the rearview mirror. But we've had a lot of fun with it.
All right, very interesting. Yeah, interesting time there after kind of WWF kind of took over, and I suppose after the void the AWA left, there's a lot of different shows popping up and promotions and everything like that.
And the thing is too, when the WWF, when you're cycling so many guys through it, when these guys get done and lose their contracts, they're available for the indies. So we've got to work with some pretty big names that people know, like managing the One Man Gang and working with guys like the Honky Tonk Man, and got the stink face from Rikishi one time, which wasn't very pleasant. But, yeah, we've been in the ring with some pretty big names.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's a cool aspect of wrestling, just the way people are able to come back around like that and set up these interesting matchups or things you wouldn't see.
If you ever watched the movie The Wrestler, it's pretty true to life. I mean, you go only king of the hill for so long till Vince says you're not anymore. That's. Back in the old days, the guys weren't making a lot of the money that they were now, but at least they could work. I hear like with WWE's like the pinnacle of everything, and I think it's kind of killed the old style wrestling. I prefer the kayfabe days and territory days myself, but it is what it is.
Yeah, it's become very, very pop culture. And you were mentioning like the One Man Gang, and who are some other people you've crossed paths with or managed here, like locally, or maybe some bigger names people would recognize?
We've worked with either managed or worked against guys like Jim Brunzell, Kenny the Sodbuster, Jay, of course Buck Zumoff, and Greg Gagne. Jerry Lynn, Sean Waltman, One Man Gang, Rikishi, Honky Tonk Man, Sabu. God, the list goes on. But what I really enjoyed was just meeting some of the guys and getting to know some of the ones that I grew up watching when I was a kid, like Mad Dog Vachon and Kenny J and Jim Brunzell and guys like that, and actually getting to know them and having no clue when I was a little kid that, hey, one day these guys are going to be buddies of mine in the same business. And like I said, I stumbled into the business. It was just right place, right time, and I just couldn't stay away.
Very cool, very cool. I think it's interesting how you said you went from a fan and kind of followed closely for 10 years, and then you started your own promotion. Did you work other promotions as well? Or?
Oh yeah, we worked for pretty much every promotion around that was around Minnesota at the time. Indies from Evian Wrestling. I can't even remember some of them. There's been so many that have come and gone. MIW, SDW. Just think of 3 letters or whatever. We probably worked for it at one time or another. But yeah, it was basically there was probably about 4 or 5 indies that were running around Minnesota and western Wisconsin, and we pretty much they had guys that would work for us, and we had guys that would work for them. So the wrestlers do cross a lot of different paths along their way and work for a lot, but there's not too many that stick around. Like SDW's been around a long time, MIW's been around a long time, FLWA, we've been around 26 years now since we started. There's a lot of them that come and gone, and we've worked for pretty much all of them. We've worked in front of 12 people. We've worked in front of 1,500 people before. The guys that get the crowds of 12, they're not around for too long.
Very interesting. And who are some of the local wrestlers here in Minnesota that you've seen like grow up or seen them like played a role in their career or
Oh, Austin Aries is one that I can think of offhand. Sean Waltman. Also, although Sean was actually about ready to take off when I first met him. Jerry Lynn, Lenny Lane worked around here while he was doing, see, a lot of these guys that would work nationally would also be living here and doing indie shows unless they had a contract rider that wouldn't allow them, which pretty much all WWE guys have now. Once they fulfill all their obligations, they can't do any indie shows unless they can't even show up for a wrestling appearance without Vince's permission. That's how it's gotten to be. But yeah, we've had a few that have started out here, and probably I'd say probably the one that's done the most. I don't know who would be doing. Probably Austin Aries. He'd been around. He just retired just for his own. He wasn't happy about where he was. He left his contract, but he'd been working for Ring of Honor and NXT, TNA.
For sure, he's gotten out there and made his mark on the world of wrestling.
Yep. Another guy that slid through really quick while we were going through the indies and just came out to a couple of our shows just to see what it was all about at the time was Brock Lesnar.
All right.
He showed up at a couple, but he was under Vince's wing, and Brad, who was doing the AWA, for Vern at the time, this was after AWA had shut down, was actually personally training him before he went to the AWA. So he was showing up around indie shows just to see what the sport was all about when he first got out of college and started into the business. So he's another one that I forgot to mention. But he didn't wrestle any indies at all. He just showed up and went straight to WWF.
Get a real feel for what's out there and what the real wrestling is about here on this core level. What were some of your career highlights or some of the best times you had?
Well, probably one of the funniest, most outrageous, and best times we had was there was a period that the Jerry Springer Show was using independent wrestlers.
All right.
They were trying to get more colorful with their stories, which 90% of them are fake. I hate to break the news to you if you're a Jerry Springer fan, but it ain't what it's all cracked up to be. And I think I can get sued for saying this, but screw them anyway. It's been almost 20 years since I was on there. It was 99 or 2000 that we'd went out there. But, yeah, we had actually, if you go on to YouTube and Google Jerry Springer High Rollers, you'll see something pretty hilarious. But anyway, yeah, they flew us out to Chicago. We had limos waiting for us at the airport. We had Steve Wilkos tickets for a Cubs game. And, yeah, we had just a great time. But, yeah, they were actually using the indie wrestlers. Like I say, just check out Google. And we were involved in a little bit of a love triangle. And if you want to see what that was all about, Google Jerry Springer High Rollers. And you'll have a little chuckle.
Interesting, man, to be part of that Americana, that classic like Jerry Springer that and perhaps inspired Vince Russo in the Attitude Era.
Yeah, what they would do, too, is they would have everybody that came on the show, they'd want you to bring your videos and guys' promos, pictures, and that's how we ended up on there with somebody else that we had worked with, brought a video, and we were on that video, and of all the wrestlers they saw, the only ones they were interested in talking to were me and Sterling, the High Rollers, and that's how we got our role. And he called me up one day and said, "Do you mind if the Jerry Springer Show calls you? They want to possibly do something with you." And it wasn't 2 days later they called, and I think about a week later we were on a plane heading to Chicago to film.
Nice. That'd be a lot of fun. Quite the experience. Huh?
Yep, it was.
We'll have to check that out to find out what that's all about here. Well, maybe we'll drop a link here below the video. What else? Any today's wrestlers here, locally or globally, that you really like or follow?
I've really gotten out of the WWE, watching it. I'll watch, sometimes a little Ring of Honor, but I do like the indies, and I just like the local feel, and I like I like the old style wrestling, which we're never going to have again, except at the indie level. So as far as nationally, I really don't pay a heck of a lot of attention to it. But locally, I check out the MIW, SDW, and I keep up with the local websites and all the sheets that are going on to see who's doing what, and that's about really it. For some reason, I just can't sit and watch show where they're doing interviews for 35 minutes and 4 minutes of wrestling, and some of the rest, you can't tell who's the heel, who's the face anymore, and it's just once they broke kayfabe, it's kind of, from my perspective, when it went pop, that it lost a lot of its appeal. That what brought me to the sport is it's lacking. It's not as believable as it once was.
Yeah. To hear the stories of the old days of how much heat they would draw with people
yes.
coming to try to stab them or throw bottles of piss.
Yes, exactly. It chairs and starting riots and having to have bodyguards, get them back to the locker rooms and out of the buildings and stuff. Otherwise, their lives were dreadfully in jeopardy. There's many wrestlers that had been stabbed by broken bottles, knives, or hit with boards with nails in them. I've heard of that too. And oh my God, riots and chairs going in the ring. Yeah, if you could generate that kind of heat, but we'll never see that again. Yeah,
the sheer chaos of pro wrestling.
Too much of the curtain's been pulled back.
For sure. Let's see. Any road stories or funny ribs or anything?
Oh God, wrestlers are so famous.
Anything you'd like to share?
My memory is just so horseshit on remembering them all, though.
That's cool. We can get back to you on that one.
Okay, well, let me think about that for a little bit. No.
Okay. Let's see. All right, as Paul Heyman is an advocate for Brock Lesnar, you seem to be a pretty big advocate for weed and marijuana as well.
Oh, absolutely. I've been kind of a smoker all my life, and I've just gone through some health issues with pancreatic cancer, and I'm a registered patient in the state of Minnesota to legally use medical marijuana. But with the prices of it, I'm stuck with the street stuff more often than I'm able to afford legal stuff. Don't say that to the authorities.
It's sad that the system couldn't catch up and just be decent about it. It's pretty ridiculous. I mean, it's giving me hope that it's legal out there, even for recreational use in different states. It gives me hope that one day it'll get there.
Yeah, I prefer a room full of drunks, or a room full of potheads and a room full of drunks. That's for sure. Maybe all attacking the potato chips and not fighting each other.
Yeah. The one night I was at the
no good things start with alcohol. Sometimes it's fun, but usually it's not really good.
Yeah, a lot of people have probably woken up in jail and wondered what the hell they...
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it is pretty ridiculous. I mean, being at a bar, at a concert or something, and you smoke one up, and they're like, get the hell out of here, and you look around, and everybody's just getting shit drunk, wasted out of their mind, and going to drive home. And
people that talk about the world's going to go to hell if you legalize it, go out to Colorado, go out to Washington, go out to Oregon, and see how they handle it there. They make a lot of money. They're in control of the whole situation, and nothing is any different. It's just bringing it above the market, or above the table, or below it. Where do you want the money going? The people are going to be using it, whether it's legal or not. Where do you want the money? You want it under the ground, or you want it above? I prefer it above the ground, especially when you're talking about billion-dollar sales in Colorado annually. You know how much money that is in taxes? There's going to be $1 billion sales, whether it's legal or not. Except if it's underground, you're not going to see the taxes. I've been out there. It's they know what they're doing, and no, the sky hasn't fallen. And it's been almost 4 years. It'll be 4 years. I think it'll be 4 years this year. 2014.
And just medically, what did it help you with through your recent battle?
Going through chemotherapy, you have a lot of pain, a lot of nausea. It relieved a lot of that. Headaches, insomnia, inability to sleep. And it just made me, it stimulated my appetite to get me to eat. And if I did eat, it kept me from getting nauseous and throwing up what I ate, rather than the hundreds of pills they gave me. Once you become a cancer patient, they just throw pills at you. You don't even know what the hell they're giving you. I had 3 different anti-nausea pills that they said, on your way out, pick up all these pills. And the bottle says anti-nausea, take as necessary. Well, this one says anti-nausea, take as necessary. What the fuck is the difference? And I got a third one that says this is for anti-nausea and anxiety, take as needed. And half these pills, I took half the bottle and I just left them. And cannabis does twice the job. Does the same thing all 3 of them bottles did.
Yeah, you wonder about all the effects that
Yeah.
type of stuff has on you as well.
Oh my God, yeah. You look at the side effects and, chemo on top of it. Chemo is not very pleasant side effects. It attacks everything. And cannabis helps you get through the chemo. It really does. And I've talked to a lot of other people that have been in the same situation. And I just read a story yesterday that they say actually 25% of cancer patients use cannabis to relieve their symptoms.
Yeah, I feel like that's something important people need to hear from people who have been through it and
Well,
everything.
I tell you what, you have a whole different outlook of when you've been down the road. I became an advocate 3 years ago after a friend of mine died who was using cannabis to relieve his symptoms, and only he didn't last as long. And it was right when they were making pledge to Governor Dayton to sign a medical law, and he was against it because the Police Federation was against it, and they were his biggest campaign endorsers. And they finally put enough pressure on to sign this horseshit bill, and it was about 2 months later that he had passed away. And as a tribute to him, it just pissed me off so much that I kind of became an advocate, joined NORML, and was fighting his honor, and not realizing that 3 years later I'd be in the same boat that he was, and wanting to use medical marijuana to alleviate the effects of my cancer. And I tell you what, it worked. It worked, and it'll continue to work for, well, they say over 200 different afflictions. And I think right now, Minnesota, I think we have 11 different conditions that we will certify somebody to be a medical patient. And that means we got 189 left to go. So legalize it across the board. I don't care if you got a headache, you should be able to have access to marijuana. I don't care if you don't have a headache. If you just want to sit back and smoke a joint, you should be able to sit back and smoke a goddamn joint.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, I'm glad that it's been able to help you through your battle and that you were able to win and that you're here with us today, able to share these stories. Anything else you want to cover, or maybe just what the scene was like? I mean, I guess you kind of covered what the Minnesota scene was like there in the 90s. Anything else you want to mention?
I'm just thankful to have been a part of it. Like I said, as a kid, you dream about it. And I was never big enough to be the big wrestler, the big tough guy. I never was able to put on weight, even doing steroids. I think the most I ever weighed was 190 pounds. And I truly was on the gas. And it fell in my lap, and I ran with it. We had hoped to go a little further, but just working at the indie level, it was a blast. The fans were always great. It's funny, they would throw shit at you during the match and want your autograph afterwards. This just always cracked me up. Well, there was some that would truly hate you, and that kind of reminded you of how it was in the old days. Every now and then you would get people that would hate you, and you didn't want to walk by them alone. You never know how crazy. I've been attacked a couple times at matches by irate fans that were taking it a little bit too seriously.
So as a high roller manager, you're like a management team, or?
We manage, and we would wrestle if we had to. It seemed like any time there was a no-show at a wrestling match or something, it was somehow one of us would wrestle, we'd tag or whatever, but we always had to patch up any problem that became because of a no-show, or somebody showed up, got hurt in the night before in a match, and said, all right, Jerry, Sterling, what do we do? It's like, Okay, I'll wrestle him. Okay, well, I don't know why, but they always came to us to patch things up. I was never a good wrestler. But I could do enough just to carry myself, and Sterling's pretty much the same way.
All right. I think it's interesting the different roles or how different people come into this like magical thing that's pro wrestling, or just it's so different that you can't. I mean, you can compare it to different things like the entertainment and the sports and everything, but the different aspects of everything. What were the High Rollers like?
The High Rollers, they're arrogant, rich, but kind of stupid. It's kind of like, how do these guys ever have any money? Because we were like Barney Fife, but we had beautiful women. In fact, we were trying to count one time. We used to have girls come out with called the Rollerettes, and actually, I think that's why we were on all these other indie shows besides our own promotions, because we'd always bring good-looking women with us. But yeah, we were rich and arrogant. We lived in Las Vegas. We were friends with Wayne Newton, Frank Sinatra. You know, we hung around with the Rack Pack. We had $1 million credit limits at every casino, and Mick Karch would just really embellish on that. You know, he did all the local announcing and stuff, and he did a lot of our matches and stuff as far as commentating, and he really put over our personas, is what we were like, and he always had the greatest names. We were like Itchy and Scratchy and Milk and Magnesia, and oh god, he had all the names. Yeah, we had a lot of fun working with him too over the years.
Very cool, very cool. And is there a video library of this stuff or anything anywhere?
You know, there's stuff. There was a gentleman by the name of Al Paybon that did all the Saturday Night Ringside and the Mixed Karch's Body Slam review that passed away. And he had all the archives of everything. And I don't know, whatever happened to that. There's so many I'd like to see. But he's given us some. I've got boxes of videos from our matches and stuff. I've got stuff from, Waverly, mid 90s, late 90s.
Very cool.
We've got, and we were running on television for a while on Saturday mornings when Polish Joe was producing that. I think it was SDW at the time.
All right.
And we used to do shows at First Avenue, and there's a lot of those you can find. I think I've got the collection of them. But if you Google on YouTube, I don't know where the hell you'd find a lot of our stuff. We were like about 10 years too early for a lot of this stuff, so timing wasn't quite there as far as the internet and finding actually evidence of us existing. But we are out there. You just got to look hard.
All right. That's part of something that we've been interested in trying to preserve with the Mindy guys who have taken over the Minnesota Pro Wrestling News area. And they've started publishing went back and published some of Razzle and Rick's stuff that goes back like 10 years. But yeah, it'd be very cool to dig back and get some of the history from the late 90s or early 2000s and everything. It'd be very cool to put that all together and kind of see the growth of the scene and what's happened here. Just hearing your stories about the High Rollers and any other characters from that time period or some people you feuded with.
Oh, one of our big feuds was with Mitch Paradise. It seemed like every show it was whoever Mitch Paradise was wrestling, we managed, and it didn't matter. It didn't matter who it was. And another guy was Charlie Thunderblood Norris. He went on to do a little bit of work in WCW for a while. He didn't have a real long career down there, but he always did it because he just thought he didn't have to work as hard when we were out there, because we'd take some of the action away from the ring and give him time to rest, where he felt he didn't have to work as hard. So every time that we'd see us walk in the locker room and he'd say, "Hey, these guys are going to manage you." Well, it'd be people we never met before, and sometimes they weren't too cool with it, but Charlie always insisted, and it always went over really well. So yeah, Charlie, Mitch Paradise. And we go on the road, Scotty Zappa and Lenny Lane were kind of our road buddies. Chi-Town Thug, Tony Medlin, he was another one. They're all guys that don't work anymore, old people like me.
All right. Any memories from these other areas like Wisconsin or anything?
Oh, Wisconsin, you usually didn't remember a lot. All I remember was they were fun, but we used to get so damn drunk there. God, we always had rooms, stayed overnight, and we'd end up partying in some little bars. In Wisconsin, there's a bar every 20 feet, They all look like a house. They all used to be houses, in fact. But we found some fun little places in Wisconsin. Yeah, road trips are always fun. Always a great time.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you sharing your stories with me. Get to hear a little piece, somebody's perspective of the pro wrestling world, who's been there, who's done it, who's lived through quite a lot. Anything else you want to add here?
No, it's really been a fun ride. I'm just hoping that my health gets better, and maybe we'll get around a ring. We'll never be completely out of it. It's just, it gets in your blood. It's there for life. I mean, you're stuck with it. It's like a disease, kind of like cancer. You just don't go away. If you get in the wrestling business, it really sucks you in. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. Been hurt. Had some great times, broken a few bones, lost a little blood, but it's been a good time.
You want to get into some of those injuries or how some of that?
Yeah, it's just I've broken ribs, got my teeth put through my lips, and head split open with chairs and rim shots on the ring post and stuff like that.
I think that's an aspect people don't take into account. They're like, oh, they're just playing fighting, and it's very realistic.
You do get hurt. You do get hurt. Trust me on that one.
Yeah, definitely. I went and stood up in the ring the one day and just seeing how far up you are, and just, I don't know, there's just a lot of respect to anybody who steps in those ropes and puts their body on the line for the entertainment of us fans. So thank you, Jerry.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Thank you, fans. The State of Pro Wrestling. Thank you for tuning in.
Hello, everybody. This is the one, the only King Ricochet, and you are listening to State of Pro Wrestling.
Wrestling! Yay!